Many walleye anglers would rather stay home than fish during an insect hatch. But up next, Jon Thelen reveals why there's no reason to throw in the towel.
Man, was that fast. When you dial in the fish where they're willing to bite, you make it happen awful quick. And that's what we just did here. Here's what's going on. We're in the middle of a pretty nasty bug hatch. Now, you're not seeing it on my shirt today. You're not seeing it in the air. You're not seeing it on the motor because we got really, really lucky this morning. It's windy. Otherwise, I'll tell you what, today would almost become really hard to fish. I mean, these bugs hatched and it is nasty. You know, a lot of times you think, I mean, even I look back to the days when I'd be sitting at home and I'd hear about a bug hatch and I'd say, I don't know if I'm gonna go fishing this weekend then, because I don't know if I can catch them. I'll tell you where I've changed a little bit in that respect. Is fish like this right here, you can still make them bite. You just gotta make a bunch of changes. And those changes, I mean, it's a bunch of stuff. It's not just one little thing. It's not just a couple little things. It's some wholesale changes. And if you're willing to make them, you can usually, look at that. He got himself unhooked while he was flopping around in there. That's awesome. Big chunky walleye. Boy, you can tell this fish is eating good. Look at that. That's a male. I mean, look at how chunky that fish is. Awesome way to start a day. But here's the thing that you gotta understand. When you get these bug hatches, two things happen. Number one, the bait don't move because the bugs hatch in an area, and usually it's the bait that's eating that larva, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, walleyes will eat some of that larva. They'll just scoop it all up and you'll see it in their mouths, but a lot of times what I do believe it is actually more to do with the bait's eating the larva, the walleye goes through there to eat the bait, ends up with a mouthful of it along with the minnows he's eating, okay? So what you gotta understand is it's gonna affect where the bait is, that bug hatch. And if you can then follow where the bait moves to, now you're gonna have a chance to catch the fish. And ultimately, what you gotta know is this: bugs don't hatch on hard bottom. Bugs hatch off of hard bottom. So the first thing I do when I'm in a bug hatch is I stop fishing those hard bottom spots where I was catching fish the day before. You might have been catching them on that hard bottom for 3 weeks, but I'm gonna tell you right now that when those bugs start hatching, the bait that was in that hard bottom area, that rock pile, that gravel, whatever it is, that sand, the bait's gonna move to the area where the bugs are hatching, and they hatch out of soft bottom, that muddier area, that transition. So when you find those fish out on that transition stuff, you're gonna find them there because the bugs are hatching there, and that's where the minnows are going. So that's the number one thing, is you gotta change your location. You gotta get off of that hard bottom, and you gotta put yourself in those soft bottom areas where those bugs are hatching, because that's where the bait's gonna eat. That one didn't waste any time at all. Ooh, feels like a pretty good one too. You know, one of the things about this is when you get zeroed in on these fish like this, right out off of the edge of structure, they're not really moving much, because what they're gonna pick is that spot where those bugs have hatched, and they're not gonna move a whole lot. Their next move is gonna be when this bug hatch is really kind of done, and then they're gonna go right back up here on top of that structure. But right now, these fish are just sitting right out off the edge. Another great eye. They're just sitting here right out off the edge. And you know, to explain to you what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for those spots where you've got hard bottom, you know, rock pile, a reef, whatever it may be. And then out around it, I'm just moving out, watching my sonar. And when I see my bottom content change, and the way I can do that with the graph I'm using is I can actually see it go from yellow to red. And when I see that, now I know I'm into the soft bottom. So all I'm doing is I'm driving around looking for that soft bottom stuff, because walleyes like that one right there, they're out in this soft bottom. And the reason they're out there is because the bugs have hatched out there, the bait's out there, everything's eaten out there. That's what you're looking for though. If you just drive off of that structure, drive off of the hard spot, work your way right out until you find the soft bottom, then you're most likely gonna start seeing the clouds of bait, and you're also gonna start seeing the arcs, and those are the walleyes. There he goes. Got him. Another one of those same fish. Maybe a little better even. Man, this is cool. You can go through and you can do a lot of, yeah, now he's planing up like he's a smaller fish. Let's see what we got going here. Sometimes them smaller fish will actually plane up toward the surface a little. I don't know. You know what? It's a good eye. Another good eater walleye. Man, I'll tell you, this is just awesome. Look at that. I'm gonna show you what I'm using. Simple deal. You hear me talk about it quite often on Fish Ed, because it's a setup that I used tournament fishing when I was float fishing. It's a setup that I used guiding every day when I was float fishing. It's a setup that I still use every single day, whether I'm fishing for fun or out filming Fish Ed TV. Another great walleye. But let me show you what it is. The #1 recognized best float on the market, Thill balsa. This is a Thill Pro Series Float, and it's made out of the best premium balsa that you can use. Brass grommet up here in the top, so that line just slides through it, just zings right through it. That's why you use this float. I mean, everything's right about this Thill Pro Series Float. Then down here at the bottom, Lindy live bait jig, 16th ounce size. I think it's just a deadly way to do it. One last thing. You know, I get asked a lot about these rods. I use a big, long 8.5 foot salmon steelhead rod. And there's a lot of different brands that make an 8.5 foot steelhead rod. You know, I mean, pick your favorite brand and go out and buy their rod. But the bottom line is this is a medium action rod, but it's got a really soft tip. So when I get to that fish, I'm reeling, and I can see him in the tip, then I set the hook. The other thing is, if I don't have all the slack out for some reason, here's the thing, that long sweeping hook set with that 8.5 foot rod moves a lot more line and takes out a lot of that slack. A little bit more forgiving. I hook a few more fish. There he is right there. It's amazing how effective this tactic is in a bug hatch scenario. These fish, they'll still bite. You know, there's no reason to stay home. You just got to get out and do things just a little bit differently. Give them a little bit more of what they're looking for in respect of getting them to feed up, getting them to come up toward you. It's a nice walleye to wrap up our day. Look at that. That's awesome. I'll tell you what, don't stay home just because the bug's hatched. Just make a couple adjustments and come out and make those same fish that were biting up on the hard bottom stuff just before the hatch. Just make a couple adjustments and make those same fish bite. Fish like that right there, they're always eating. I mean, one way, shape, or form, once they get past the spawn, they're always eating. That fish right there, all he's thinking about right now is growing, and the only way he's gonna grow is to eat. Right through a bug hatch, he'll be eating. Just change those locations. Get out a little deeper, find that soft bottom adjacent to that hard bottom stuff that you were catching them on before. Change your tactics, fish a little bit higher in the water column. Maybe flip over to a float system, and I'll tell you what, you can catch fish all day long.